It is time. The NFL draft nearly here. It is our draft week mailbag, talking about trades that could happen, wildest moments from drafts, what could be wild in this NFL draft on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there who hung out and got ready for the NFL draft. It is nearly here. If you're new to the program, welcome. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to this podcast. And it's draft time. So let's get into the draft mailbag this week, Matt. And the first question is about trades. And there's a couple of different questions here about draft trades. Right now, as we sit, all 32 teams have a pick in the first round. It hasn't happened for since 1990 something. I can't remember when the last time was.
I know, it's great.
Every team drafted in the first round. I will predict that that's not going to happen again, and that someone's going to trade out. And there's got to be some trades here. So Michael says, who will trade out of round one? Falcons, Vikings, Eagles, somebody else? And Stuart wants to know just one simple answer. What's one trade that we would predict on draft night? Do you see a perfect match of a trade in this draft? And for me, I think from picks 4 to 24, Matt, all those teams would listen to offers to move down. The thing I can't figure out is who would be moving up and who are you moving up for with that team?
I know. So I'm going to run one thing by you before we dig into this. I'm going to say there's a 80% chance when the opening bell rings Thursday, every team still has their first round pick.
Yeah.
Where are you at on that? Okay. I mean, you don't think it'll be a pre-draft trade?
And there might be some players on the move. Would it be a first round pick of a player on the move? Probably not. And it would probably be on the clock when something like that happens. More like
I don't know if you saw, but Adam Schefter put out a list of like 8 to 10 prominent names that are, Pickens, Goddard, that could be traded. Tyreek, some names out there. So I'm betting a player or two moves. I think we'll have plenty of in the moment trades, none before the draft.
I agree.
I think the top 3 are set. And I think the Patriots would do anything possible to get out.
Right.
Don't you?
Yeah. So the Patriots is 4. They're the most obvious, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason the Patriots would get an offer for a team to move up is probably because a quarterback goes in the top 3 to shake things up. And then the Patriots say, oh, never mind. We don't want to move out now because now we get Hunter or Abdul Carter. And they would probably say, never mind. But maybe they would still look at this and be like, you know what? We would love Abdul Carter at 4. He's here, but the Bears are calling. And man, we could really get a lot and restock this thing. Or the Panthers are calling. We can move back and stay in the top 10 and still get an offensive lineman, which is what we should do, and kind of take our medicine and build this thing with a new regime and get future draft picks. So maybe that would still spur it, but it would cost more, and it would be a much better situation for the Patriots to be like, oh, cool. Now teams are finally calling us, and we have the option of drafting a guy we really like and have a huge grade on, maybe the top grade in the draft at pick 4. So that would be the scenario to spark the first trade, in my opinion, if a quarterback goes top 3.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time writing a story where a team needs to get to 4, 5, 6, 7, assuming Ward, Hunter, and Carter are gone. I think you have to stick and pick. No one's going to be calling you.
And if we're reading the tea leaves, a team's not calling and moving up probably for Shedeur Sanders.
Not that early, I don't think. If the Browns or Giants are coming from the second round, I don't think you're going to give up a future first, second, and a lot more.
Yeah, and they're probably not coming all the way to 4. Like they would need Sanders to fall a little bit, at least to like 8 or so.
That's what I was going to say. Is I think right around the Saints is when it gets interesting.
Right. And I think
maybe you get ahead of them, or they take Dart, and then all of a sudden Sanders the only guy left, and now I got to start scrambling. Like the Saints, I think, is when it gets interesting.
Yeah, the Panthers I would put in there because are you going to draft like the chalky pick for the Panthers? And we'll talk about chalky picks, I think, in this episode as well.
Yeah.
The chalky pick is Jalen Walker. It's like, could they be talked out of that Jalen Walker pick? Do they feel amazing about that, or be like, we'd probably rather take this guy at 15, right, or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And so could they move down? So the Panthers are a team I think would be an interesting team, willing to move out. But again, like a lot of teams are going to be willing to move out. Who's coming up is the big question. And most of the teams that are willing to come up are probably coming up from the late round 1 area, playoff teams trying to get in front of the other playoff teams, or teams coming back in from round 2 into round 1, because I think that's where most of the action could potentially happen because it's too expensive. And again, these grades are going to be so similar between 20 and I say 20 and 24 because that's kind of the sweet spot of playoff teams in the 20s. And the Vikings are one of the most obvious teams that only have 4 draft picks, and they moved up last year, spent a lot of picks. It would just be smart for them to move down. So yeah, any team between 4 and 24 would likely be very interested in moving down. Who's coming up?
Yeah, I don't know who's coming up. I do think, without question, the 2 most interesting teams are the Giants and even more so the Browns. Once they get Hunter and Carter, do they just start working the phones like crazy from that point on for a quarterback? Maybe. I know the Steelers are somewhat of a line of demarcation. Do we have to get in front of them for Dart or Sanders? My personal feelings on that are no, you don't, but I hope you do, and you take a quarterback that I don't want, so I get a better player 21 or whatever. I also think the Steelers would very, very much like to get out of 21. They don't have a second-round pick. The Falcons were mentioned. They're really light on picks, and maybe there's enough edge guys that the difference between Mike Green and Uzarako isn't enough, for you to not go backwards, something like that. But I do think some teams that could trade up are the Texans for a line for tackles. I'm starting to think the tackles might go quick. The Chiefs really come to mind.
I agree with you. I think tackles and edges.
There could just be a crazy run on edges, and then all of a sudden teams that 25 thought they had an edge for sure, and they all might have to move up for Pierce,
right? So and the Eagles, Howie Roseman's one of the most active GMs in the NFL. So Eagles clearly, and that's why Michael brings him up, I'm sure. And you need to get in front of all the other playoff teams, and they all need a defensive lineman, right? So if you want your guy, you're not going to be comfortable sitting at 32 and be like, oh yeah, we're just going to wait for all these other teams that we're going to be fighting in the playoffs against to draft all these ends, and we're not going to get the guy we want, or even get any guys that might be left for you at 32. So that's, if I'm projecting a trade right now, and if you said, hey, you have to predict an exact team to team trade, I would say Eagles move up to 24 with the Vikings.
I was going to say, kind of just to throw a bold statement out there, I'm going to say one of the 2 Super Bowl teams at least moves up.
The Chiefs moved up twice last year, the first and second round, to get their guy. They're a very active team. There was a draft a few years ago where John Lynch of the 49ers literally traded every pick. They didn't select one time in their original spot. I don't think it's going to be that active, but the Niners are around. The Niners have a lot of needs. I think the Niners moves might be, I think, obviously the Niners, I think, would be very interested in moving down.
Yeah.
Does Mason Graham fall a little bit and they move up 2 spots, right? I don't think they're going up to 4 or anything like that.
I think he could be a faller.
Right. And so that's an interesting one. I think maybe if we're seeing a lot of draft trades, it might be more like, well, we're not going crazy because we don't think it's worth it, but here's a 4th and we're going to move up 2 spots just because of this one guy we like a little bit, so very minor trade ups maybe in this one throughout the early
Denver doing like a minor trade up for Hampton or Loveland or
I go through this process, and this kind of leads to another conversation. You're going through the mock draft process, and you're trying to put your mind in every GM's head and every team. And I'm like, okay, oh yeah, running back. I wouldn't take a running back in the first round. I'm sure not going to spend multiple picks to go trade up and get one, right? I mean, that is tough for just pure. If you're playing the money ball game, draft resources, not only drafting a first round running back, but trading up for one. And I could see it with Genty. Is Hampton that guy too? Oh, that's tough. Yeah.
I wouldn't. I just hear rumblings that could be in the cards. They want to get a playmaker. Sean Payton comes from the Saints team that would trade up like crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's certainly more active teams and actors. Like I would predict the Bengals to not be a team that trades because they almost
I bet they make every pick exactly where they're sitting.
Yeah. It's so yeah. So if I have to pick a trade, Eagles come up to 24 with the Vikings. There you go.
I think there'll be plenty of movement though when it's all said and done. I have a hard time predicting where.
Late round one is going to be, I think, fun.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I think it's going to be like, what's happening? What's the trade? Let's wait. Speaking of that, a lot of chalk out there. What are some wild things that could happen in this draft? What are some of our favorite wild moments that we never saw coming? Because the draft is always fun. It's a reminder how crazy this thing gets. Thursday night next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. And if you are ever planning on buying tickets to anything, sporting events, comedy shows, concerts, theater events, you need to have Gametime in your pocket ready to go so you don't miss out on some phenomenal deals on those tickets. Like, say, an NBA playoff game. And there's nothing like the atmosphere of a playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. All-in pricing, views from your seat, no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So we talked a little bit about this off the air. And Michael says, call your shot, guys. What pick outside of the top three are you guaranteeing to happen? And, he wants one that's maybe a little bit later, but everything that in these mock drafts is so chalky right now. And this is what happens every single year. And it's a great reminder, Matt, that what we think is happening right now is not going to happen because it never happens. It'll be shocking if it goes Cam Ward, no trades, Cam Ward, and then Travis Hunter, and then Abdul Carter, and then Will Campbell, and then Mason Graham, and then Ashton Genty. Like, it can't possibly go that way. It never does. Is that what's going to happen this year? Is it going to be that easy? Because I can't see it.
I think there's going to be more chaos than ever. I mean, this last couple days, I am drinking the Kool-Aid, and I know that's a rookie mistake, and I am not a rookie. I'm a grizzled vet in terms of drafts, going back to even when I was a kid, watching. I should tell the story real quick. Like, my mom was pretty harsh about, you 102 fever, you're going to school. But I can stay home on draft day. It didn't used to be on a Saturday. Something like, I've been glued to this thing since I could crawl, basically. And I know we have some wild moments. I'm kind of excited to end the show with that, by the way. But anyway, I am drinking the Kool-Aid like a rookie that I think there's going to be more chaos in this draft than ever. Like, I don't think Mason Graham's going to the Jags like everybody thinks. That's going to be Genty or Tet McMillan. Or I just listened to a couple podcasts lately, and I wish I remember which ones they were. I give them credit. Of let's just think outside the box. Like, let's not do what everyone thinks and try to really put things in perspective, and I think it's going to be weird. Like, last year wasn't really until the Penix pick. But when it was all said and done, you knew a bunch of tackles were going early, a bunch of quarterbacks were going early, and a bunch of wide receivers were going early, and D was going to take a while. And that happened. And the Penix thing was weird, but all in all, the players went kind of when we thought they would go. I don't know if they will here. I think teams might just take tackles and edges and say, I don't like anybody else.
Yeah, I'd like, and that's one of the big things for me. And I don't know how to phrase it, but I would want, like, just to simplify it completely. Take the consensus big board right now, and anybody who is 260 pounds or heavier,
I like
that
this.
Has a good amount of athleticism for their size and position, right?
Josh Connerly.
That player, I'll take goes higher. And
yes,
under 260 pounds, I'll take the goes lower.
I'll take the earlier, the under, the lower number on their over-under.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I tend to agree.
It's going to be a big man draft. The tackles are going to go high, and because they're rare, and we always see that, the defensive ends are not, especially those complete 3-down defensive ends. There's fewer of those than the stand-up guys. They're going to go high, and there could be a run even in the top 10 to 12 picks, right?
I've been thinking about Michael Williams a lot because of you. Like, I don't know that he gets past your Niners.
He might not get past the Jets.
Right.
Exactly. Like, that's one of those where you're like, oh, of course, 6'5", 270, athletic, Georgia, projectable football player goes high, right? And like
that's the edge from day one and develops into a pass rusher,
Yeah, and so it could go like Carter, Stewart, Williams, Walker, and by pick 11,
he might go ahead of Walker.
There've been like 7 defensive linemen drafted already.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And 2 tackles and a
quarterback. And Membo and it's just economics. It's supply and demand. It's economics. I say this all the time around here just to put it in Steeler perspective. I'm like, the Steelers took a tackle in the last 2 drafts. I hope they take one in like the 3rd or 4th round this year, because Dan Moore's worth $20 million and a 3rd round comp pick. So draft a tackle every year. You know what I mean? If that's what Dan Moore and Jalen Moore are worth, then
don't take a safety or a zone corner or a running back. And wide receivers are going to be sprinkled in. Maybe 2 quarterbacks in the 1st round. I don't think there's going to be 3 quarterbacks. I don't have them evaluated that high. It might happen. I think Bo Nix last year was the shocking one. I was like, probably a 2nd round guy.
That one's probably
12 or whatever it was. And that happens, but then it also happens the other way where you're like, oh man, there's going to be 4 quarterbacks in the 1st round, and there ends up being 1, and the 2nd one's not until round 3, right? So the one of the biggest BS things is that quarterback that this guy's going to go high. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they. The famous one for me was Michigan State Connor Cook. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Michigan State quarterback. It was like late in for. Oh, watch out! Back half of round 1, Connor Cook, 4th round. It's like, come on.
There'll be a lot of that. Some of these running backs will last forever too.
Yeah, and the running back is so deep. Defensive tackle is an interesting one because there's so many good ones and 1st round worthy ones, but it's so deep. A team picking at
that might be day 2
teams, Jets, Niners, Bears, Panthers. Those teams are going to say, we can't get a defensive end at the top of round 2, but man, there's almost no way we're not going to have a good defensive tackle if we want to go back-to-back defensive line. And so, again, that's why I think there could be a run on offensive tackles specifically, not necessarily guards.
Yep, just supply and demand.
Offensive tackles and every down defensive ends, they're just hard to come by in this draft and in most drafts. And you can get a defensive tackle throughout day 1 and 2. And you can get a situational pass rusher on day 2 and day 3. But
I think Friday could be littered with defensive tackles.
Yep. And so that's going to be probably, to take it back to the last question about trades, that's probably going to be the movement, is teams getting up in front of other teams to draft the defensive linemen that are falling, to draft the offensive tackles that are falling too. So if you to put it another way, you can't expect to be drafting in the 2nd round and just chill out and get an offensive tackle, which is
or probably an edge.
That happens every year. Last year there was twice as many, and you still couldn't do that.
And you still can't do it, right? And they're better, right? Just watch the Super Bowl. I mean, the game was won at the line of scrimmage.
And everyone's going to say, like, oh, running backs are making a comeback. It's a really good class of running backs. You know what? Still, that pales in comparison to offensive defensive line. And everybody needs offensive linemen. Everybody needs an offensive tackle. Everybody needs defensive linemen. Almost every single team, you look at their needs. One of the top 2 or 3 needs is going to be a defensive lineman or an offensive tackle.
And everyone's going to want an extra defensive lineman. Your Niners have had that for years. The Eagles have had, give me one, get greedy with them. I got 5 good ones for a 4-man front. I went 6.
Transfer portal, does that help or hurt prospects? Because I can buy it both ways.
I think both.
Yeah, because you have a guy like Walter Nolan who went to 5 schools in 6 years. That doesn't look great. There was Jermaine Burton last year, and it's like, is there really character problems, or did just circumstances happen the way circumstances happen? And then other times, it's like Cam Ward's gonna be the number 1 pick in the draft, and all he did was get under recruited, go to Incarnate Word, raise the level of that program, go to Washington State, right? Elevate the program, go to Miami, elevate the program. And he was just graduating to a new level and taking his game to a level every single time. That absolutely helped him too. And then there's prospects like Charles Grant. Speaking of offensive tackles, an interesting one. Maybe you can get him in round 3, and he's a project offensive tackle, but he's at William & Mary. And so scouts might look at him and say, oh, loyal. He stayed there, didn't take NIL money, didn't transfer out, because everyone knew who he was. And he's, by the way, got some good tape from early in his college career at William & Mary against last year's defensive rookie of the year, Jared Verse, before Jared Verse transferred to
I didn't know that.
before, but he transferred out to Florida State. And so they played each other, and he did well against him. But then there's other people who are like, oh, what, are you not competitive? You didn't want to go take on guys in the SEC, right? And probably scouts that are frustrated because, he was injured, he got hurt in his last game. And then, you don't have tape against a lot of big time players. And, it's like, oh, you couldn't handle the competition, right? So there's definitely both sides of it. It's just it's just an extra thing that you have to check into. Yeah.
And I do think, especially for quarterbacks, the Parcells things, the more games you play, the better, no matter what school you're for. I think that's a good thing. The two things I was really stressing, though, and I think Ward is a perfect example of, if he could go from one college at the opposite end of the country to a different college in a totally different environment and immediately be the best player and impact player, well, maybe he can come to Tennessee next year and do the same thing. I've seen him adapt quickly, the tough environment.
That's already a professional, right?
Right.
Different circumstances, still play. By the way, where is Incarnate Word?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So I heard during the draft process, but I don't remember. But the other thing, too, is just from being a scout, Bo Nix goes from Auburn to Oregon. Well, you're obviously going to ask the Auburn coaches about Bo Nix. There's more people to ask. There's more teammates. There's a better chance somebody on your team played with them.
And you might get a more, first of all, you might get sour grapes.
So you might get a crappy answer that's unfair.
But you also might get a more realistic answer where the current coach is going to just only say positive things about his guys.
Yeah, he got stuck behind this left tackle you guys haven't heard of. That's awesome. And he, made the smart move. And he's a great kid.
Cam Ward's an interesting case in his own, but generally it probably you're going to start asking questions if a guy transferred more than one time. I think it's probably not in most cases. Transferring once, I get it. Transferring multiple times, you start to be like, okay, what's really going on here?
But no, it's a wild west of the scouting world. There's no doubt.
The draft is wild. It's going to be wild. They're not prepared, Matt. Let's talk about some of the wildest moments from NFL drafts past next. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles. EA Sports College Football 25. You can play with all these prospects that are about to be drafted and next year's draft class as well. In College Football 25 from EA Sports, Call of Duty Black Ops, Avowed, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Speaking of streaming your favorite shows, we're talking 4K streaming and endless entertainment. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. That is Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. What are some of the wildest moments from drafts past that you can remember, Matt? And do you have any inkling of something wild that could happen that would start to shock folks in this draft?
Not sure about this one.
I think part of it is that you can't see it coming because we get
that's the beauty of it, right?
Even
I didn't see Penix coming.
Right. Yeah, Penix. Didn't see that coming. That was a shock.
Right.
Like Mason Graham falling out of the top 10. Like that would be.
I could understand that one.
But that would blow some people's minds because
it would. But he's not a great athlete. He's got. Yeah.
There's
no one's ever seen that in a mock.
Yeah. someone out there today would look at a mock draft and say, there is no way Mason Graham could get to pick blank. Right.
I actually think there could be. Because he's not a great athlete, he's got short arms, and give me an edge. Give me Membo, give me,
I will say this real quick about Mason Graham and the Jaguars specifically. I went through this process and I'm doing mock drafts, and I know that it can't be as chalky as it's supposed to be, but I'm sitting there looking into the options, but I can't put a different player in my brain there. And I think about Gladstone, who came from the Rams, and the Rams last year drafted Braden Fisk. Right. Mm-hmm. And you see some similarities there.
Yeah.
And then who was there before that? Aaron Donald. Well, who was a weird prospect with not quite a perfect body prototype for the position. And so of all the GMs coming from all the teams, the guy who just came from the Rams seems like the most likely guy to draft Mason Graham. So it's really hard for me to get off Mason Graham to the Jaguars for that reason. And then you look at the rest of the class and it's like, man, I could put a lot of guys here, but I'm not going to draft a running back there. It's hard for me to put my mind in that, but it could be Genty. And I don't think that their current running back situation would prevent that.
No.
But again, you came from the Rams. Gurley, would you redo Gurley if you were with the Rams and he was there through all of it, right? So that's why the Jaguars went to Mason Graham is actually, of the chalky ones, still the one I like the most.
I mean, I think Ted McMillan could go there, which I think is a terrible pick, but I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of wildest moments, and immediately when I saw this question, I thought of the bong gas mask Tunsil was about as crazy a visual and thing as I can remember.
Yeah. You can't even begin to think of like, what? Draft morning? You're like, what am I looking at?
Right.
Gas mask bong and teams scrambling. That for sure. Like, would have gone earlier in that draft, and teams just didn't even have time to figure out what was happening.
And what's crazy is it doesn't seem that long ago. Tunsil, I mean, he's still in his prime, basically. This wasn't the 70s, but social media wasn't as strong then as now. And the view on marijuana was 1,000 times different. Like, I don't even know if it would change his stock today.
I was talking about this the other day with a friend. Would Josh Gordon's career be so much different in this day and age? Right.
I get asked about Martavis Bryant around here all the time. Like
Davis. I love Martavis so much, man.
It was so good. Yeah. Yep. And along those lines, I thought about Sapp and Moss. I was glued to the TV when I was a fan. Those guys fell, and everyone knew they were like the best players in the draft because they probably got busted smoking weed at the
Moss is a perfect example.
Moss
he goes to transfers, right? And then, but he's such an obvious, like Moss would never slip to 18 anymore.
No way.
Don't say never, because there's Derek Harmon just yesterday. It's like, oh, all of a sudden, Derek Harmon, this great prospect who actually had helium, he's kind of moving up. It's like, oh man, this guy could even go in the top 10. All of a sudden, oh no, he's got an injury. I was like, wait a second, what? Medical, medical red flag suddenly, and that happens a lot in the draft too, because we don't always have all the medical information. And I think a really big one for me was, who was the Eagles running back, Boise State?
Jay Ajayi.
Okay, He's awesome. How is
Dolphins?
Yeah. How is he falling to round 3 or 4 or wherever he ended up getting drafted? And then, like the second the draft's over, is like, oh yeah, he's got medical. He's got bone on bone in his knee. It's like, well, could you give us that information before the draft? It's like, and he was awesome, but for 3-4 years, and that was it. Like that was the reasons, because like he's not going to play for a long time. He's got no cartilage in his knee, right? And so there's a lot of stuff we still don't know about these prospects. Maybe some red flags off and on the field and medical that are really big deals, and maybe some that aren't, that maybe would have been a big deal in the past that aren't anymore too. So just there's so much that goes into it that we don't know, even when we're building these mock drafts.
So a couple other ones that come to mind, and I also did a search, but the couple that came to mind off the top of my head were the bong mask first.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt them because they ended up with a phenomenal player.
Yeah, I know,
but the Vikings couldn't get Kevin Williams card in on time. And this is like the 6th pick in the draft. This isn't the 166 pick. That was nuts.
Yeah, the clock running out, and that you always wonder. It's like, so what happens when the clock runs out? And then we found out, like, oh, okay, somebody else picks.
You're just
not just one, 2 teams swooped in and took picks in front, and they ended up with Kevin Williams, who I think was the best player of all the 3 players.
And they still made out. Yeah.
So that was a great one. Yeah, the clock running out, and then I remember, because that was back in the day before you had slotted players. And so then that was like a big holdout in training camp, I think, because Kevin Williams is like, well, we should be paid in the slot because of our original spot, not where you ended up drafting us. And it was just like a whole thing. And I don't know if they've really gotten into any detail about what happened there and how that happened. I think they were trying to consummate a trade or something. And then not only did you not turn the card in time, but 2 teams were ready to go and swooped in and got their draft picks before you selected. And it ended up not mattering too, which is insane.
Let me rapid fire a few for you too, because I did do a search. First off, Aaron Rodgers falling was weird.
Gelled hair, and the league is saying we don't want that to happen, but then they keep inviting people to the draft that aren't first rounders. So it's like, which is it? I think they say they don't want that to happen, but they secretly do like that intrigue, and they want a quarterback hanging out to talk about. And like, here's what's going to stink about the draft coverage: they're just going to talk about Shedeur Sanders all night.
I know, and he'll just sit there, right.
It's going to be frustrating for some other fans. And you're like, talk about the guy my team just drafted, and they're going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders.
So here's some rapid fires. I was going to say Rodgers' career started weird, and then the back half of his career, Jordan Love, was weird.
That was a pretty shocking one. Jordan Love
was very shocking.
Shocking as the
Rodgers pick. Yeah. I think both those Green Bay quarterback picks were strange.
And I think the story behind the Rodgers one too is the Packers clearly weren't expecting to do that, and even when they're about to make the pick, they're calling other teams and they're like, "Hey, is there something we don't know about Rodgers?
Mm-hmm.
Did he rob a liquor store last night? What's going on here? We have to take this guy."
Mike Mamula is a crazy one. That's a crazy one.
That was before my time, but I just remember seeing, I think it's Pete Rozelle at the time, right? Announcing the picks. And Mike Mamula. Yep.
Mike Mamula, right. There's the GM that called out Kuiper. Who's this Kuiper idiot? And then that was over a linebacker pick. I forget who that one was. That's like 83. It was a Colts.
Right? Yeah, and they took Trev Alberts.
Trev Alberts, that's who it was, right?
Quarterback. And
interviewed the GM, right?
Yeah, and he goes off on Kuiper. Made Kuiper a legend. And guess what? I remember Mel Kiper's name, and I don't remember that GM's name. So
right, and he was somebody. It might have been Polian. It was somebody good. It was a good GM. No,
it's somebody that you do know their names. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But it's probably his most famous. And Kuiper was right, man. So
Kuiper was right. They made the wrong choice. Here's a couple of crazy ones. Some of them are old. The Raiders used a first-round pick on Ray Guy, a punter, in 1973, and Sebastian Janikowski in my lifetime, a kicker. That's nuts.
That is awesome.
Here's another one.
Imagine that. Niners fans lost their minds when they drafted Jake Moody at the end of the 3rd round, like comp pick 3rd round area. Imagine a kicker in the 1st round.
First round. And they took a punter in the 1st round who even went to the Hall of Fame, and it still was a probably bad pick. I mean, some of these are probably before your time. I mean, like 1986, 1st overall pick, the Bucks took Bo Jackson, and he never played for them once. He said, "I'm going to play baseball. I'll play for you guys." And you knew that was a possibility.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's such a different.
Could you imagine? And then the Raiders take him in like the 5th round a year later, and he comes and plays for them while he was a Royal.
Unbelievable, man. So many good ones. I think it's the whole
Ricky Williams.
Which one was that?
Ricky Williams.
Oh, Ricky Williams and the Ricky Williams trade, and then he's wearing
the dreadlocks and trade the whole draft.
Ditka. Oh my God.
I'm just scrolling through. There's some crazy ones. You know, like
so good.
Everyone booing Eagles booing McNabb when he was like the 4th pick of the draft was a big one because they wanted Ricky Williams.
The same year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of crazy ones. I mean, Claret sues the NFL and then goes in the 3rd round. Mario Williams over Bush. When that came out, the whole world lost their mind. What the heck are they thinking? That was a crazy one. There's a ton. I mean, Tito in the 1st round.
I argue that they were right too.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's a lot. Almost every year there's something crazy. Some crazy or another.
About how overrated Reggie Bush is. My Reggie Bush take.
I have not heard it, but I bet I'm in the same market with you.
Yeah, I like, especially for coming out of college. I was like, dude, you don't run around guys in the NFL like you do against Fresno State. You know, it was like the Peter Warwick thing where he took every punt return and like went back and forth 9 times before he went upfield.
It's like the WVU kid, Austin.
And Bush had a great career, and he would probably be even better in today's NFL.
Right.
But they did that was the right pick.
He might not be a first round pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, he would be a third down back, and he was only 190 pounds. Yeah.
Like you're right. It's not recess in fifth grade where you just run around,
Another example of how far that we got to go, how far the draft has come, back to the Kuiper thing, arguing with the GM. Not only do teams respect draft media more now, they actually utilize them as a source.
Oh, yeah. Like they reach out to Dane behind the scenes or all the time. Oh, yeah.
They keep track of mock drafts to try to figure out what other teams might be doing. They utilize it as a resource. Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens, said that they look at Madden ratings.
I've heard. Yeah.
Insane to think that a team would even admit that in past years, right? So it's a very different game now.
We got to run, but it's super quick story. This was like a little over 20 years ago when I worked for Pitt, and we shared a facility with the Steelers. And boy, there's nothing I wanted more on the planet than to walk next door and sneak in the draft room and just see I'd never seen a draft room. I want to know who the Steelers are picking, blah blah blah. But anyways, in the parking lot, I got out of the car next to, they had like a scouting intern. And in the back of his car, he had like 12 magazines, Kuiper's Blue Book, Street and Smith. And I'm like, you guys use those? He's like, yeah, it's mock draft day. Every one of these has a mock draft in the back. It was probably printed in March or February. Way pre-combine. Right.
Take the magazines out, and they would have the wrong
information. The magazines.
A receiver 6'4", and he was really 6'1.5" at the combine.
Yep. Like Mel has him taking this receiver in the 18th pick. I'm like, that was 3 months. I mean, we didn't even know then. I'm like, oh, that's really smart.
Yeah.
So he was like the magazine guy. Like,
that's awesome.
It's so great. Street and Smith has him taking this guy. Like, when was that printed?
Unbelievable. Love it. Draft is almost here. We've got you covered every step of the way on Peacock and Williamson. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Back tomorrow, Peacock and Williamson.